In this recording then, we're just going to sweep up a few small bits and pieces of the syllabus that really provide us with some introduction to some of the other concepts that will come later on in the course, particularly in the next chapter. So we start off by introducing what we mean by the term market. When we talk about a market in economics, we're just referring to any place, any medium through which buyers and sellers of goods or services are brought together. That could be a market stall, it could be a shopping centre, it could be an online marketplace like eBay or something like that. But any place where potential buyers and sellers of any good or service are brought together. It might include as well things like the job market. So via recruitment agencies and things like that, where they're the medium through which buyers and sellers of labour are often brought together. And one very important concept that you'll hear in the next section of the syllabus when we're looking at demand and supply is that of the price mechanism. The price mechanism is the name economists give to the process through which buyers and sellers interact such that an agreed price for a particular good or service is arrived at based on supply and demand. And that price mechanism operating effectively should result in an efficient allocation of goods or allocation of scarce resources. In other words, if there's demand for a particular product, then the price mechanism should ensure that that product is produced and resources are diverted in order to allow that good to be produced. But if there's an excess of a particular good that's being produced, the price mechanism will spot that and resources will be diverted away from making too much of that product to making more of other products that people do want to buy. So that's what we mean by market and price mechanism. Also, something that's referred to in economics is the basic structure of an economy in terms of how it's set up to operate. And that can be one of two extremes, or realistically somewhere in the middle. The two extremes are having a complete free market economy where it's purely left to the interaction of supply and demand to decide what goods get produced and what the prices are going to be. Now, the only issue with that, because there's very little government intervention in that type of economy, what would theoretically happen is if there are certain goods or services that organizations wouldn't produce because people aren't prepared to pay for it, then those goods or services wouldn't get provided. Think of things like street lighting, for example, just to pick that one out of thin air. We all like the fact that when we're walking around roads or driving around roads at night, there are lights that help us see where we're going. Now, if it was left to individuals, if it was left to us as consumers to directly pay for those street lights, we probably wouldn't bother. We go, well, why am I paying for it? Because the bloke next door has got the same benefit out of those street lights. So people would probably be quite reluctant to pay directly for street lighting. And if nobody's going to pay for it, who's going to provide it? You're not going to get companies putting up street lights and not getting any money for it. So with no government intervention, there will be certain goods and services often that wouldn't get produced, even though there's a benefit to society of having them. You could go completely the other way and have a fully planned or command economy where everything is state controlled. We saw it in Eastern Europe until the last couple of decades. There was quite a heavy command or planned economy, places like Russia, where the state decides who gets what, and so on. Most economies around the world nowadays are more mixed economies, maybe except for places like North Korea, which still would tend to have a command type economy, but a mixed economy where the free market is left to its own devices to determine prices and goods that people want for the most part, but certain key products and services, there may be intervention by the government to get involved to provide those goods and services, otherwise nobody else would. So that's the sort of different extremities of type of economy that one could have. The final little introductory section here is there's a small section on methods of expansion within the market. So if we're operating within a market, if we're an organization that's in business, for example, then there are two main ways that we can look to grow. We can either try and grow internally using our own skills and expertise to develop new products, build into new markets, and so on. That's known as organic growth. And the benefits of that are that you can do it at your own pace. Maybe the costs are spread over a longer period of time. The alternative, of course, is to look to grow by buying other businesses, mergers and acquisitions, which has the benefit of being quicker, but can be quite costly because you're paying for other people's expertise that's already been proven. And all the money will usually have to be paid up front when you make an acquisition. So it's just understanding that there are different ways of growing a business, and there are pros and cons to both of those. If there's a particularly strong team of people in another company that you really need, or they've got access to a particular technology that you really want, then an acquisition might be the only way you can get hold of those resources, but it will come at a price. Okay, so that concludes this short session just with a few introductory bits of economics thrown in.